In this movie, we'll take a look at tweeners. Tweeners is the area between keyframes and how the objects or colors or whatever you're working with behave between these points. In between, that's where tweeners come from. In this animation, I have a square that moves from one side to the other of the stage, rotates, and we get a little bit of scaling with it that turns it into a parallelogram. Tweeners are identified by this area right here and in another area. This item right here, let me go ahead and pull up this area so we can see the drop down. When we click, these are all the options we have for working with our motion that takes place when we actually move an object. Now, by default, whatever you have selected here is going to be how the program records what to do between the keyframes. So right now we have smooth. How does that show up when we drag our editor back and forth like this? If I go ahead and just hit the play button, we see our item slow down a little bit towards the end and then come to a stop. If we want to change how the default is set, then what we need to do is come down to the actual keyframe itself, click on it, it will turn red, and then we can right click and have our entire menu disclosed for us right here. We can see smooth enabled. If we change this to something like linear, this icon changes very slightly down here. You can kind of see that. When I go ahead and scrub the timeline now, we'll see that there's no slowdown in the motion. It starts abruptly and it finishes abruptly. Linear, it's a solid line. If we had access to our motion graph, which you may if you have a PC, you can click over here and you'll see a representation change over time that shows up in a straight line, whereas smooth, well, it had kind of a gentle motion in and gentle motion out. We'll come back to channels again. On this one keyframe, I'm going to change the motion again now to ease in, ease out. Very, very similar to smooth. And we're not going to go through all of these, but I wanted to describe the process just a little bit. I'll click ease in, ease out. Now when we go ahead and play, we'll see our square kind of ease into the beginning and ease out to the stop with the transformations completed. So really nice way to work with this. How do you consider using tweeners? Well, in the case of a body, most people don't move like robots. However, if you want a mechanical type of presentation, then you can have things like linear types of tweeners. So working with all these and the other options that we have right here give you completely different characteristics between them. Ease in and ease out allow abrupt change either at the beginning or the end, depending on which one you choose. Bezier is something that you adjust actually in the motion graph area, but it gives you further control. It's like an ease in, ease out type of tweener, but you can make it even slower in and slower out. Tweeners that add additional animation to your scene are found in ones like noisy. We have the ability with a pop-up modal dialog box to say how big the amplitude is or the range of motion and then the scale of it, because you can have it like vibrating very quickly in place or significant like just giant steps coming in the ground and moving things. I'll accept the default right now. In our scene, we now see our object moving up and down, and that's the noise level to work with. So if we wanted this thing to vibrate even more in place, then what we could do is come back to this first keyframe, come to noisy, we get the same modal pop-up box here, but instead now for scale I can say, well, I want a scale of something like 10 and choose OK. No change in presentation on screen, but when we go ahead and move this, the motion is much more coarse. It's no longer perfectly in line, but we get some nice up and down motion going on. If we change that one more time, but this time say, you know what, the scale of this motion, I want it to be something like 0.1 and choose OK. When we play now, we're going to get a vibrating object. So really nice, easy ways to add complex animation just by changing the tweeners in between key points or keyframes.